Hi, I'm Ryan Hazinski, Ardent Blockchain Education Liaison. I'd like to welcome you to The Road to Bitcoin and Beyond, a brief history of digital currency. What you see is a online, on-demand professional development for educators all across the state of Florida. If you are a teacher in the classroom teaching any number of subjects from computer science to personal finance and money management, to civics and other forms of economics and social studies, this is a relevant tutorial that will take you through introducing digital currency to students across multiple standards and strands and benchmarks that are part of the Florida academic standards. If you're a parent who's watching this at home and maybe homeschooling children, there's a lot of great activities in this tutorial that you can use for materials for teaching your students about these important concepts as they inherit a digital future. Or maybe you're just a curious student yourself who wants to learn more about digital assets and blockchain technology. This course is a great overview. You do not need to have any kind of technical background to understand everything, as this is all taught at a very high level. So if you were to teach this in a classroom context, you could start out the same thing with your students by asking them, let's dive into the world of digital assets and digital currencies and find out what they know. Share something that they may know about good or bad about crypto. In a live professional development environment, I'd be asking teachers this myself to find out because many people have heard of this, even if they don't know too much about it. We want to acknowledge both the positive and the negatives so that we have a neutral educational stance throughout all of the modules. If you're doing the pre-assessment, all of these materials can be found in our resources section on our website. If you visit edu.ardenthq.com/resources, there is a folder that contains the slides that you're about to see, as well as the pre-assessment, the post-assessment, and the standards crosswalk that shows all of the Florida classrooms that this applies to, mostly in the social studies domain. But still, it's a great way for you to gauge how much you know before you start these lessons, and then we'll follow up with something later on. If you're an educator, this could be specific to your classroom or your approach, whatever course it is that you're teaching. Maybe if you're a parent who's homeschooling children, this is something that you just want to kind of delve deep into. But there's a lot of different ways for you to kind of just think about what you know about digital currency and how much you're going to gain by watching these modules today. The entire professional development activity should take about 1 hour, broken across the intro as well as the 5 modules. So what you're going to see as you move deeper into these is the introduction, which we're doing now. Module 1 is before Bitcoin, the early attempts to create a decentralized digital asset or cryptocurrency. Then module 2 is all about Bitcoin's breakthrough, what makes Bitcoin unique and the first true cryptocurrency or digital asset. Then module 3 is post-Bitcoin explosion, a lot of developments that happened across blockchain technology and digital assets. Module 4 is risky business. Again, as I said, we have to acknowledge that there are great rewards to be reaped through understanding digital currency, but there's tons of risks as well, and we must acknowledge those. And then the conclusion is just what's next for digital currencies. Clearly, in where we are today in 2026, our world is becoming increasingly digital, not less so. So it's incumbent upon us as educators to let the next generation understand what kind of economic world they're going to inherit. So the introduction is just sort of a start to what is money and digital currency. Now, throughout all of the modules, you'll see all of the cross-curricular alignment for each module. You can see here various focus benchmarks from computer science, personal finance and money management within the social studies domain, and then there's always going to be a financial literacy and digital currency tie-in. We also have student activities that are suggested to kind of get students understanding the material as well, if you're taking these lessons and bringing them into your classroom. But we'll just start off with what is money. It's a medium of exchange that enables trade without bartering. It is a system of value that's based on collective trust and acceptance, and its value comes from shared belief and usability, not physical material. And this is something that we'll talk about because these are also key functions of money. First and foremost, it's always going to be a medium of exchange. It's universally accepted for buying and selling. It's also a unit of account. It provides a consistent measure of that value. And then we also have a store of value that holds purchasing power over time. And it can also be a standard of deferred payment, which enables loans and credit. You'll notice throughout some of the slides, you'll have a benchmark spotter that calls out a particular relevant benchmark within the standards that applies to part of your classroom. Over time, properties have evolved when it comes to money. So the properties could be things like the acceptance, durability, portability, divisibility, scarcity, and uniformity. Historical evolution, we saw this first with bartering, where commodities were used. Maybe you're trading grains for animal skins. And then fiat, which is paper currency by government decree, until today, where we now have digital money. Modern forms include credit systems and cryptocurrencies. So there's a lot that we'll talk about in the course of these slides. Now, in the particular case of the United States, we often refer to the money supply, and sometimes these are referred to as a shorthand as M1, M2. M1 is liquid money. This is the cash and the checkable deposits. So that's physical currency and then things like your checking account. M2 is what's called near money. These are liquidity sources that could be tapped into that maybe are not easily accessible. Say if it's in a certificate of deposit and is lined up, it's bound up for some amount of time. Or it could be money market funds or other high yield earning potential accounts that are off to the side. The big question is, where does Bitcoin fit in all of this? Is it M1? Is it M2? Is it a new category entirely? And this is something that we'll explore. When it comes to digital currency, this is just money that exists only as code. And so it's not coins or cash. The key traits are there's no central control. It uses cryptography, which is a very tough kind of encryption that's very bound on mathematical rules that are difficult to break. And then it lives on blockchains. We're not going to get too technical in this particular overview, but a blockchain is a distributed ledger. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming modules as well. But Bitcoin is a great example because it's like a digital cash that you can send via an app. And we'll talk more about how to do that in later modules as well. So why does it matter? The benefits to digital currencies are the speed and cost. It's so much faster and cheaper to send money with digital currency. Inclusion, there's 1.4 billion people who are still unbanked, and they can use their own smartphone to actually have a cryptocurrency wallet and be able to do these kinds of transactions without relying on some sort of intermediary such as a bank. And then innovation enables apps like games where you can own your things. I mean, if you're a student, for instance, and you love playing Fortnite, you don't actually own the skins that you're paying money for. In the digital asset world, however, you can own these things and you genuinely take them into your own inventory and custody. So why, of course, does it matter? There's some risks to talk about too. So there's volatility. Prices can crash overnight. Security is a huge issue. If you lose your private keys, you lose your money. And then you have to watch out for scams, much of which will be covered in Module 4. So the takeaway is that digital currencies are a game changer, but they do come with risks. Today, we'll explore their story and how it connects your curriculum and your students throughout these 5 modules. Let's move on to Module 1.